Hello, my friends. In the year 1881, in Nietzsche's least studied work, Daybreak, Friedrich Nietzsche included a pretty astounding prediction about a certain religious nation. I just wanted to read this prediction because if you think about this was written in 1881. And the foresight that Nietzsche had really is astounding. So without further ado, this is section 205 of Daybreak, The People of Israel. One of the spectacles which the next century will invite us to witness is the decision regarding the fate of European Jews. It is quite obvious now that they have cast their die and crossed their Rubicon. The only thing that remains for them is either to become masters of Europe or to lose Europe, as they once, centuries ago, lost Egypt, where they were confronted with similar alternatives. In Europe, however, they have gone through a schooling of 18 centuries, such as no other nation has ever undergone, and the experiences of this dreadful time of probation have benefited not only the Jewish community, but to an even greater extent the individual. As a consequence of this, the resourcefulness of the modern Jews, both in mind and soul, is extraordinary. Amongst all the inhabitants of Europe, it is the Jews who least of all try to escape from any deep distress by recourse to drink or to suicide, as other less gifted people are so prone to do. Every Jew can find in the history of his own family and of his ancestors a long record of instances of the greatest coolness and perseverance amid difficulties and dreadful situations, an artful cunning in fighting with misfortune and hazard. And above all, it is their bravery under the cloak of wretched submission, their heroic spernere se sperne, that surpasses the virtues of the saints. I tried to look this up, spernere se sperne, and the only thing I could find was the scorn of scorning oneself. So make of that what you will. Anyway, back to the segment. People wished to make them contemptible by treating them contemptibly for nearly 20 centuries, and refusing them access to all honorable positions and dignities, and by pushing them further down into the meaner trades. And under this process, indeed, they have not become any cleaner. But contemptible? They have never ceased for a moment from believing themselves qualified for the very highest functions, nor have the virtues of the suffering ever ceased to adorn them. Their manner of honoring their parents and children, the rationality of their marriages and marriage customs, distinguishes them amongst all Europeans. Besides this, they have been able to create for themselves a sense of power and eternal vengeance from the very trades that were left to them, or to which they were abandoned. Even in palliation of their usury, we cannot help saying that, without this occasional pleasant and useful torture inflicted on their scorners, they would have experienced difficulty in preserving their self-respect for so long. For our self-respect depends on our ability to make reprisals in both good and evil things. Nevertheless, their revenge never urges them on too far, for they all have that liberty of mind, and even of soul, produced in men by frequent changes of place, climate, and customs of neighbors and oppressors. They possess by far the greatest experience in all human intercourse. And even in their passions, they exercise the caution which this experience has developed in them. They are so certain of their intellectual versatility and shrewdness that they never, even when reduced to the direst straits, have to earn their bread by manual labor as common workmen, porters, or farmhands. In their manners, we can still see that they have never been inspired by chivalric and noble feelings, or that their bodies have ever been girt with fine weapons. A certain obtrusiveness alternates with a submissiveness which is often tender and almost always painful. Now, however, that they unavoidably intermarry more and more, year after year, with the noblest blood of Europe, they will soon have a considerable heritage of good intellectual and physical manners, so that in another 100 years they will have a sufficiently noble aspect not to render themselves, as masters, ridiculous to those whom they will have subdued. And this is important, and therefore a settlement of the question is still premature. They themselves know very well that the conquest of Europe, or any act of violence, is not to be thought of. But they also know that some day or another, Europe may, like a ripe fruit, fall into their hands, if they do not clutch at it too eagerly. In the meantime, it is necessary for them to distinguish themselves in all departments of European distinction, and to stand in the front rank, until they have advanced so far as to determine themselves what distinction shall mean. Then they will be called the pioneers and guides of the Europeans whose modesty they will no longer offend. And then, where shall an outlet be found for this abundant wealth of great impressions accumulated during such an extended period, and representing Jewish history for every Jewish family? This wealth of passions, virtues, resolutions, resignations, struggles, and conquests of all kinds. Where can it find an outlet but in great intellectual men and works? On the day when the Jews will be able to exhibit to us their own work, such jewels and golden vessels as no European nation, with its shorter and less profound experience, can or could produce, when Israel shall have changed its eternal vengeance into an eternal benediction for Europe, then that seventh day will once more appear, when old Jehovah may rejoice in himself, in his creation, in his chosen people, and all of us will rejoice with him. Thank you for watching.